Hey everybody, group rides part 2. Hope everyone had a good, safe weekend. Got all caught up on the day off, which was yesterday, Sunday. Part 2, group rides. These group rides are the real fast ones. The fast, hard group rides where you see, anywhere from 20 to sometimes 50 or more people. And it almost seems like a unstructured, unmarshaled bike race. And sometimes they can be like that. These are generally kind of roady rides, although anyone that can handle their bike and be safe is usually invited. There's normally a set route ahead of time that they do every week, and they are fast. They are hard. If you get dropped, no one's going to wait for you unless you have a friend there or something like that. These take on a little bit of a different nature, both in training and in mindset that you have to go into them with. But they can be a lot of fun, and they can be good for road cyclists and triathletes alike, and anyone, mountain bikers in particular, and anyone just looking for a hard, fast workout. So all of the kind of safety stuff, make sure you take care of yourself, you've got spare tubes and plenty of food and water, that goes tenfold for these rides. You could be out and just get a flat tire and go off the back and nobody would even know, let alone whether they would stop to help you or not. So if it's your first time, it's great to go with a friend or a buddy. And definitely be prepared. If you can ride the route, or at least part of the route, by yourself or with a couple friends before you go do the big ride, that's always helpful too. And really pay attention to where you're going. All the time, but in particular if you don't know where you're going. There's no lead car to follow. And usually it's not. Sometimes you can find group rides that'll do a loop more than once, but so really pay attention to where you're going. If the whole pack turns right and you're going straight, that could be a problem. So pay attention. Training effects. I talked a little bit about how we're kind of training an anaerobic endurance type of physiology, which we don't really talk about in any of the zones. But it is important, particularly for the road cyclists. It's extremely important. And there are ways that you can structure intervals to do this. Group rides are kind of a good, specific way to train it. Often the type of power files that we see from group rides are kind of a really good snapshot of what a bike race can be like. Depending on your group ride that you go to and the level that you're racing at, sometimes they can even be harder than races. I know the group ride, it's called the bus stop ride out here in Boulder, Colorado, is usually pretty hard, and depending on how many pros are there, can sometimes be harder than a lot of the races that we actually do. They can be great kind of preparation. And I talk about some good uses for rides. But one thing I want to talk about in the audio here is the fact that a group ride is not a group ride. These fast rides can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think one of the most important things that you do before you decide to incorporate these hard group rides into your training, and how often you do that, is one, even if it is easy for you to kind of sit in on this ride and follow everybody's wheels and draft, there is still a large anaerobic component that you are using. Even just sitting in on rides, we normally see a lot of people with 10 minutes or more on a power file. So even if you don't have one, chances are you're doing 10 minutes or more of anaerobic power application. So that's a lot. And even if it's in short durations, 10 seconds here, 30 seconds here, a minute there, it adds up, and you do need a lot of recovery from it. The other thing is that you really need to assess, power meter or not, how hard this ride is for you as an individual. You might see some people kind of doing the group ride every week, and you say, well, I should do it every week. Well, you don't know what the rest of their training is like. You don't know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you don't really know how hard that ride is for them compared to how hard it is for you. If you are on death's door the entire time, just barely trying to hang on for 75 minutes or an hour and a half or however long the ride is, that is going to be a pretty intense workout. And in my opinion, no matter what your specific sport, triathlon, cycling, mountain biking, cyclocross, if you are hanging on for dear life for most of this ride, then it's time to do some more specific training and develop all of your zones, figure out which ones are weaker, develop those so that you can do the ride and sit in. At a minimum, I think you should be able to go on one of these rides, sit in, and it can still be hard, but you should be comfortable. In other words, by comfortable I mean you should never be, or at least you shouldn't be too afraid at any point in time that you're going to get dropped. Maybe you won't make that lead group, or you won't make that final selection of 10 guys off the front, and that's okay. But if you're getting dropped halfway through the ride, 3/4 of the way through the ride, and 75% of the starting pack is riding away from you, I think that it's time to find an easier ride, develop your other zones more effectively, raise the level of those so that you can do the ride with a little more physiological ease. And then there's also kind of tactics and how you handle yourself in the pack, staying out of the wind, moving up through the pack at good times, not doing too much in the beginning of the ride. I see this a lot, people killing themselves in the first 10 minutes of the ride and then they get dropped 10 minutes later. That's not necessarily, the best training, although depends on the person, I guess. So that's really the most important thing, is to really try to assess how difficult this ride is for you, and also realize that it's going to be a little bit different every week. Some weeks it's just going to be really hard and really fast, just because of the way it is. Other times it might be a little bit easier. So realize that this group ride, just like riding in general, and particularly bike racing or any kind of race that you're going to do, is very dynamic, and that it can change from week to week, from event to event. And so it can be, sometimes you might go, God, I didn't feel so good today. It felt really hard, but last week it didn't. Well, maybe it was just harder this week. It was just faster. So you really need to take into consideration, the size of the group, how fast you guys are riding, the wind, how much attacking you did, how hard you had to ride. So really kind of take all those things into consideration. Talk to your friends and coaches and training partners. Also, maybe to get more feedback on how hard a particular week's ride was. But use caution, gang. Be safe. These can be great training for a lot of different people. I've had Ironman distance triathletes incorporate group rides into their training program. If it's done correctly, we've seen some really good results. So get out there, try something new, be safe, and we'll see everyone soon.